Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Rod Shop. Today we're going to continue with the medium heavy inshore spinning build, so stick around. Alright, where we left off, we had the handle assembly complete with guides and reel seat. What we're going to do today is we're going to do a couple things. First of all, we're going to do a preliminary guide layout based on the American Tackle microwave air guides. They have a chart in their packaging. We're going to start with that. And then we're going to put it in the static load tester and adjust the guide layout. And then I'm going to show you how to take this pretty plain, relatively inexpensive looking handle and add some trim wraps to it to really kind of spice it up a little bit. So here we go. All right, first of all, inside the packaging for the microwave guides, you have several important numbers. The first one will start at the reel seat. They're telling you that from a fully extended spinning reel, which typically works out to be right at the front of the reel seat, they give you a measurement. So I'm going to cheat a little bit here. On my power wrapper, I have this run here of masking tape, which makes the layout quite a bit easier. First thing I'm going to do is find all my stuff. Okay, what I'll do, I'm going to get squared off of that. Now, on the back it says that your stripping guide should be 19.5 inches from the fully extended spinning reel, which from experience I know that with a 2500 size reel, it's going to fully extend and be right at the front of the reel seat. If you're not sure, put a spinning reel on it and test it for yourself. So I'm going to mark 19.5, which is here. X that out. And then they say the transition guide is 30.5, which will be here. And then they want the first running guide at 39 7/8, which is right there. And then if you go to the chart they have here, it will tell you, if you can read it, which means I'm going to have to find some glasses because it's in exceptionally small print, that for a 7-foot rod length they give you guide spacing. So let's come to the tip. We're going to mark where your tip top is going to wind up, which will be right there. That you go, first guide on a 7-foot is 2 7/8 inches. So from here, we're going to do 2 7/8. And then the second guide is 5 7/8. And the third guide is, whoops, I read it wrong. So the second guide, first guide 2 7/8. Second guide is 6 1/4. So we're going to scratch that one. And we're going to go to 6 1/4, which winds up here. And then the third guide is 9 3/4. It's an interesting number if you're a That's an interesting number if you're a Harry Potter fan. 14 and an 1/8 to the 4th. And the 5th guide is 18 3/4. And then the 6th guide is 24 and 5/8. So 24 and 5/8. So here. Now that puts a pretty good spacing if you look at how it lays out. So we've got stripper guide, transition guide, running guide, running guide, running guide, which these got a little close, which we may adjust that. Running guide, running guide, running guide, running guide, and then tip top. So the next thing I will do is I'll put enough of these CRB micro rubber bands on the blank so that we can hang these guides in place, and then we'll set up for the static load test. So let's get that taken care of now. So I'm gonna pull it out of my power wrapper. And don't lose the tip top, you can take it off. And then I'll just start putting these micro guide bands on. I'm gonna put about 9 on. There's the first one. We're gonna run it way down here. Nine. I'm gonna throw another one on just for good measure. And that's 10. Alright, so we've got the micro guide bands, the micro rubber bands on. I'll get it chucked back up in the power wrapper. And we'll start looking at positioning here. So this first guide goes here. I'm gonna start adjusting my stands here a little bit. Okay, so guide number 1 with some tools down here. I always use, let me move you guys down. Okay, so I'm going to lock it down, stem side up in my power wrapper, just to keep it from moving too much. It's not super tight, but that'll work. So guide number 1 is a stripper guide. So we'll get it on. I think I'm gonna put it on with 2 rubber bands because it's pretty heavy. So, pick. Now, painted blanks you got to be very careful with. You don't want to scratch the painted blank. So what I do is I take my pick and then I put it up next to the band, and I'm going to push the band up on it. In theory, down here towards the base, they get a little tight. Alright, so there's 1. I'm actually going to use 2 to hold this. Alright, so now I have my pick underneath both of those bands. I'm going to take my little needle nose pliers with the tape on them to keep it from scratching. And I'm just going to pull a gap. And slide the guide underneath. There we go. And then what I do is I will take my little scale, there it is, I'm going to stand it up perpendicular to where this guide mark is. Careful sliding it down a painted blank, because my actual guide ring is supposed to be right there. I'm going to spread these out a little bit. That looks pretty good. Okay, we'll move down to the next one. Same thing. There's my mark. Take my guide, slide it up under, pull the pick out, slide it back till I get it lined up. That's pretty good. Now I will go down through here and get the rest of these out, and then we'll be back and get set up to put it in the static load tester. So don't go away. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do before we put it in the static load tester is I'm going to go ahead and install the tip top. And I'm just going to take my tip top glue, I'm going to heat it. And I'm going to put it all over the tip here, obviously. Didn't get it heated quite enough. Got a pretty good amount on there now. Don't want it to catch on fire like that, that's not good. And I'm going to take it, I'm going to scoop some in the inside of the tube there. And then I'm going to stand up over it and line it up perfectly with my reel seat. And it got a little chilly on there for me, so it's set before I got it where I wanted, so I'm just going to put a little more heat on it. So I can move it around. And that looks pretty good right there. So as this glue is starting to cool, it's just where it's not tacky anymore. I'll take my fingernail and peel off the excess. Makes it a lot easier to clean up in the end. A little bit of residue left there. Also got some melted on my finger, which is not good. I think it melted into my skin. Stuff gets hot, people. Be careful with it. Don't play with matches. Okay, now let's pull it out of the power wrapper. These stands are great, except it's pretty slow compared to the Alps or pack base style stands, but they really hold great. I don't use this power wrapper on camera very much because it and I have a bit of a love-hate relationship. I love it for some things, other things not so much. But I'm still waiting on the G2 motor to become available again, and I will upgrade, and hopefully that solves most of my issues with it. Okay, slide this back out of the way. Let me get my super fancy static load device out here. And just clamp it down to my table. And I'm going to pull it out. Guides down. Stuff it in here. And I now need my guide alignment tool, which I reorganized the shop since I used it last. It used to be right there. It no longer lives there. So I gotta figure out what I did with it. I found it on this end. Okay, all we got to do here is slide this guide alignment tool in the reel seat. Lock it down so you will the reel. And then we're going to run this, I think this is 50-pound yellow braid, just so I can see it easier. Doesn't matter what you use. Like an awful lot of guides. And then what we'll do, I'll grab my other little clamp that I have some grooves cut in for holding this line. So what I'll do is I'll just wrap it around back through my groove. And then I'm going to put a pretty significant load on this because it is a moderate fast action. Now, what I'm doing is I'm going to sit back here and I'm going to look for any irregular transition, because you will see there'll be a little bit of an angle as you hit each guide. What I'm looking for is to get the smallest amount of angle change from one guide to the next. That means you're going to be evenly distributing the load. Now this one needs to come back. Now, the numbers that we started with here from American Tackle, I mean, they're very generic. It's a great place to start, but you really need to load test these for yourself at least the first time you build on a particular blank, so you get a good idea of where it should be. But I load test almost every rod, because even though a blank may be numbered the same, and that is what you don't want to have happen. Where you go? Alright fellas, I'm losing my stuff. There we go. What I did is I slid too fast and pulled the guide out from under the rubber band. And this can be a challenge without putting it back on the power wrapper, but I got it. Yeah, just slide up in there anyway. Okay. That one's twisting. We don't want that. It's a pretty nice smooth transition here, and then we got a pretty sharp angle. So what I was trying to do was slide this one to the rear a little more, and I pulled it out yet again. Well, this may be a video about me fighting with one guide for 2 hours, because that's what looks like is happening at the moment. Okay, there was a lot of editing that just went on, because yeah, this rod and I were not getting along very well at all, and I'm having one of those days where my neuropathy is really bothering me, so I can't really control my fingers like I want to, so I get frustrated. And there may have been a swear word or two uttered. I cannot confirm or deny that fact, but it's possible. So, finally got the guides back in underneath the micro rubber bands. I've got them positioned so that I like the transition from guide to guide, and that the angles of the line on this side of the guide, everything looks good. It's pretty easy when you sit back away from it. I know you guys can't see this very well on camera, but trust me that it looks good. I think it's going to fish good. Now we're going to take it back off of here. I want to adjust that one a little bit. I keep messing with it. I'm going to throw another one out, and then I'm going to have a fit. I'm going to take it out. I'm going to lay it down on the table, and I'm going to give you guys the actual measurements. If you don't have your static load test device built yet or bought, you can buy them online. I think they're like $100, which is ridiculous when I made that one for about $1.50. And it accomplishes the same thing. Now you just want to be able to load the rod so that you can see how it would perform with that guide positioning in this situation where you're fighting a heavy fish. So that looks good. I'm going to try to take it off without throwing anything else off. Get it back down where we can measure it. I'll give you those measurements. Okay, here are the final guide layout measurements for this SP844 set for spinning. Uh, your first running guide is at 2 7/8. We didn't move that one. The second one is at 6 7/8. We didn't move that one, obviously. Your third one is at 11 even. Fourth one is at 15.5. Fifth one is at 22 or 20 and an eighth. Your sixth one is at 31 and 3/8, and then I didn't move the transition and the stripper. So now we're finally ready to start with some thread work. So I'm going to put this back in a power wrapper. I'll take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to start with some trim accent pieces to really make this rod look quite a bit sharper than its pretty humble price tag would otherwise lead you to believe it would. So, stay around. Okay, we're back. I've cooled off, got my composure again. I was getting quite a bit frustrated. Not so much with the rod, but with my hands. Something I'm learning to deal with in my senior years. But I'm not there yet. So we're back on this rod, trying to get my pedal where I want it. One of the ways that I found to dress up a rod, now you can do a precise layout, exact measurements of where everything is going to be. Take your digital calipers and measure, exact OD of the blank in the areas where you're going to put a winding check. If you're going to use aluminum winding checks, you'll need to do, like I said, your total layout. And then before you glue everything up, order the exact ID size winding checks. Wait for them to get here, then build your handles. And they're quite pricey. Sometimes $5 to $10 a piece for a winding check, which I think is a little too much. The rubber ones, I just don't like the way they look. So what I've come up with is I will do basically a trim band in the locations where I would have a winding check, and then I will do a small epoxy ramp, because what that will do for you is as you increase the size and the thickness of the epoxy, it's going to look like one of the swooped aluminum winding checks, just because of the way the light is refracted through the epoxy. It's going to magnify it. It looks great. So we're going to do that really quick here. I'm going to do 3 quick trim bands in the places where I would normally put a winding check, and then where the hook keeper is going to go, we'll get that wrapped, and then Nathan's going to wrap the rest of these for me, and we will finish this rod up the next time when we do the final epoxy, the epoxy ramps and the labels. So here we go. Nothing fancy about these. It's getting yourself positioned. I'm going to start with this one here. Now what I'm using is Fuji Metallic 903 D size silver. And get my thread tension correct. It's a little tight. Okay, now what I'll do is I'm going to pin this tag end down here in the middle of the split grip. Pull this thread back, all this slack back up on the spool. And I'm going to start a wrap and go up tight against the butt grip. Now at this point I'm going to jump over that initial wrap and come out from there. Now I'll keep this stuff burnished up pretty tight here in just a second. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, one more, 10. Now I'm going to put a thread pull in, and I'll put 5 more wraps on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I'm going to let that go a little wider, have a little more silver accent, so I'm going to go 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That should give it the look that I'm going for, so I'm going to hold that tension with my finger, cut loose from my spool, drop it through my loop, and then pull that back underneath like that. I'm going to pull some tension. I'm going to tighten up all these threads before I cut that tag end off, in case I need to tension it a little bit more. And flatten these what comes under down a little bit. Okay, razor blade on top. I'm just going to lay it here, and I'm going to pull that to it. There we go. That's trim band number 1. Now when we come back and do the epoxy ramp, you'll see the effect I'm talking about. It's going to look like a swooped aluminum winding jet. Alright, so let's go and do the second one. Same process, just in reverse. Just a little more tension. Take our razor blade, going to lay it flat. And there we go. There's 2 trim bands. Alright, we'll move ahead. We'll knock out this one here. Right in front of the reel seat here. Something that will happen with metallic thread. So I will grab my other needle nose pliers without the tape on it. And we're just going to grab that bit of, it's basically the covering on the metallic thread. And that has got to come out of there. I would use my tweezers, but again, I relocated everything in my shop and I'm not exactly sure where they are. So let's see if I can fix it with the burnishing tool. Get it packed in here. Okay. I can fix that. Now, razor knife. Lay it flat. And there we go. I'm going to have to burn that end off there a little bit. And maybe that one too. If I can get that with the burnishing tool. You probably can't even see what I'm looking at. Yeah, see, that one sticks up now. So that one we will take off. I think it's where this thread, the metallic thread is like a thread with a coating on it. And the coating will peel off like this has done. When I pulled it through, it cut it and peeled off. So I'll find my tweezers and pull that out later. So we'll do one more wrap and then we'll call it on this build for the wrapping. Like I said, we'll come back and finish up with the epoxy work. So I'm going to slide hook keeper. I put my hook keeper on the top side of the rod away from the spinning reel so the line doesn't get caught in the hook keeper when you really don't want it to. So I'm going to tape this down right there. And hold it. Yeah, you can see my hands are cramping pretty badly. Here, I'm just going to tape off high up here out of the way and across, and I want to come across that hook keeper to really hold it down tight against the blank. I'm going to put out in front of it what is about the equivalent of 4 wraps. It's just my personal preference. There's not a magic number there. I'll cross over. I'll let the thread tensioner take over. And start straightening this up and pushing it down at the same time. Nip it, tuck it through the loop. Really tighten the tension down. Gonna burnish. Get this outside line nice and straight. Any gaps out of there. Flatten this as much as possible. And I'm going to cut it. Okay. Well, there you have it, guys. Trim bands in place of aluminum winding checks, and hook keeper is wrapped. Now, like I said, Nathan's going to wrap these out for me, and we will go ahead and do the black and white one as well, the same trim pieces. And then when we come back, we're going to do labels, and then I'll show you how to do these epoxy ramps to make these trim bands look like winding checks. So, as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.